Minister, can I suggest to you there really is something surreal about the way you're trying to explain away what really can be best described as an existential crisis right across our public health service. And for Fine Gael, who pride themselves on their management skills, their efficiency, their financial prudence, to try and justify what, over the term of Fine Gael being in office and 3 different health ministers, James Riley, Leo Varadkar and now Simon Harris, which is really an absolutely extraordinary tale of failure and a crisis. We have GPs protesting outside as we speak because of a crisis in general practice. We have a national nurses strike, we have a national ambulance strike, we have a persistent and unprecedented trolley crisis, hundreds of thousands on hospital waiting lists, we have a crisis in our mental health service with CAMS being 50% understaffed, we have the cervical check scandal, we have persistent overruns in the health budget running to the hundreds of millions, and then the cherry on top of all of this is the absolute disaster of the National Children's Hospital, which when first touted was going to cost just over €400 million, now the bill has reached €1.4 billion, €1.7 billion all in. But $1 billion, even by your estimate, increase in the cost of the National Children's Hospital. And we are supposed to seriously believe you when we say it's not really your fault and you're going to get to the bottom of it, you're in charge of things. And of course, really to add insult to injury, much of this is being batted off to PwC to sort out, to give us answers for. PwC, who worked for BAM, the contractor at the centre of this controversy, doing their accounts, auditing their accounts for 9 years, receiving €34 million at least from BAM. BAM, a contractor who has a history of massive overruns in Holland, in Britain, in Ireland, and the people who audited them are the people who are apparently going to get to the bottom of the scandal of the National Children's Hospital. It beggars belief. It absolutely beggars belief. And I really want to ask you, Minister, why is it you try and explain away this €1 billion cost overrun? That's €1 billion that is going into the hands of builders, building contractors, but you dig in your heels against the nurses and say, no, not a cent to the nurses. It's okay, we can explain away an extra $1 billion going to building contractors, but we can't pay the nurses, the people who actually hold what's left of the health service together. You dig in your heels and refuse to engage with them seriously. You've made a mess of the health service. 3 successive ministers. Why don't you just give it up now and accept that you failed?
Minister. Thank you, Eoghan, and thank you, Deputy, for the question. Of course we have challenges in health. Of course we do. But that's why we're spending more money on health than we ever have. And each year of this government we've sought to increase the money for health, both current and capital funding, and where additional resources have been made available, health has been prioritised. And I've been part of those negotiations when we've discussed them around increases in our budgets. The cost overrun that we're dealing with here is €450 million, above what was profiled in the initial outline in 2017. And about €320 million of that goes on construction, another €50 million on VAT, and the rest is going on equipment leasing, design teams, and those types of things. And that money has to be spent to deliver this hospital. I think it's wrong to conflate it with the issue of the nurses. I think it's wrong for a number of reasons. First of all, because it's not true to say that nurses are not getting pay increases under what we have in the Public Service Pay Agreement, and changes are happening as a result of the review that happened last year into issues around recruitment and retention. But it's also to say that the challenges that we face in terms of what's happening in the public sector goes beyond the nurses as well. The Public Sector Pay Agreement is an agreement that we have in place across the unions to make sure that we can restore losses in salary that were there because of the crisis that we faced, to do so in a way that we don't step right back into another crisis and have to cut salaries again. Everything we have to do, we do in a sustainable way. And when we talk about what happened here with the Children's Hospital, let me be quite clear of the importance that we deliver this hospital. And that is going to cost money. And that is what we are going to get to the root of, as to how these costs went from the initial outline for Phase 2 that was announced in 2017, and then the figures that were brought to the Minister in November, and then to the Cabinet for decision in December. What exactly happened in that process? And PwC will work in tandem with the government in doing that. And I say in tandem because Minister Harris has been in committee all morning answering questions on this. Minister Donoghue has taken questions on it as well, as has the Taoiseach here in the Dáil. Officials have been in committee last week taking questions. So we have a process in place whereby questions are being answered in terms of what happened, but we also have to do a deeper dive, and PwC will do that, and you've seen the terms of reference in terms of what they will deliver with that information, which we will have by March, and then where we go from there. But it's very important that we get to the facts of this matter, and it's very important that we all understand that we need to build this children's hospital, and that we are going ahead with this because of the important improvement it's going to bring for our health system, which needs those improvements in terms of facilities, in terms of making sure that when parents have sick children, they get the best and most appropriate care possible, and that they can do that in the right environment as well. That's what the Children's Hospital is about, and it's going to stand there for more than 100 years. And it's incredibly important that we get it delivered now, and in delivering it, using the work that PwC will do, that we find cost controls where we can and cost savings where we can as we go to completion in 2022. Thank you.
Who holds the public health service together? The nurses and the midwives, the ambulance drivers, the GPs. You won't talk to the INMO about the issues that have brought them out on strike. You don't recognise the NAGP, the representative group of the general practitioners, and you refuse to talk to the PNA Nazareth branch who are involved in industrial dispute in the ambulances. Won't talk to them. Won't give a cent to these people who actually hold the health service together, but €1 billion over and above what the original estimate, when James Riley announced at James's Street, it was 485 million. It's now 1.4 billion under your watch, and we're going to fork it out, and it'll probably go higher. I saw a meme the other day, Minister. The tallest building in the world cost €1.7 billion, and that's about the cost of the National Children's Hospital. It's shocking, and you're willing to give that money to these builders.
Time is up, Deputy.
But you won't even talk to the people who actually hold the health service together. The nurses and the midwives, the GPs, the ambulance drivers. It's shocking double standards. It's typical of Fine Gael, but now you've been exposed on your last little bit of claim for credibility that you could manage things in a prudent financial way. You've made an absolute dog's dinner of this key infrastructural project, and no apologising or explaining can justify it.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, to conclude, please.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. Thank you, Deputy, for your follow-up question. There are nurses at work today, and I know that nurses who aren't at work and who are striking tomorrow don't take that action lightly because of their commitment and their care for the patients that they look after. But we as a government have to bear in mind potential consequences that might come were we not to stick to the public service pay agreement. That is there, and within that agreement there are changes in conditions and improvements in conditions. There are increases in salaries for people working in the health sector. They are there, and even additional ones will kick in from the 1st of March of this year. So it's not true to say that things aren't being done to help improve the position of public sector workers. They are, and that's why we're seeing an increase of people working in the public sector over the last number of years. You refer back to initial figures that were, I think, from 6 years ago when we first started talking about this children's hospital. Again, 6 years ago speaks to the delay and why we don't want to delay it any further. But the economy has radically transformed in the last 6 years. No thanks to you, of course, or any position that you ever took on any budgetary decision that we had to make to restore the public finances. And what we're trying to do now is to make sure, both in relation to the public service pay agreement, that we can continue to have our public finances on a sustainable footing, not least because of the dangers that are potentially there in relation to Brexit, and where it has come to this very significant cost overrun in relation to the Children's Hospital, that we get to the actual facts of the matter. And the €1 billion overrun isn't a fact, Deputy, and you can jump up and down about that, but we need to get to the actual facts and then understand what lessons are learned from there, what decisions the government can then take in terms of accountability, and what additional cost savings can be found between now and the actual finishing of this hospital in 2022. That
concludes Leaders' Questions.